Thank you, Jesus. Hallelujah. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Minister Juliana Nieto from Alma, Michigan. And I welcome you to tonight. This is the Women's Annual Conference, and our theme is We Are Great Women of Courage and Resilience. And I'm going to be talking about Ruth. Ruth, I looked up her name, and it means a friend or a beauty. She was a Moabitess. Glory be to God. Thank you, Jesus. She was the daughter-in-law of Elimelech and Naomi, who were accompanied. They were accompanied, and she accompanied Naomi back to Bethlehem. She became the wife of Boaz, and the ancestor. Excuse me. She became the wife of Boaz and the ancestor of Joseph and the husband of Mary. You'll find that in Ruth chapter 1 verse 4 and in Matthew chapter 1 verse 5. The history of her life is found in the book of Ruth. And if you know in the Bible, there's a book of Ruth. It's in the Old Testament, and it's like 4 chapters, and it tells all about Ruth and how she started out, how she, became married with Boaz, and they had a son, Obed, and it was said, the genealogy of her and how her and Rahab became related. Thank you. In the book of Ruth, she is the chief person mentioned in it. She was the great grandmother of King David. That's how I found out that she was related. Rahab and Ruth were related. And thank you, Jesus. And she was who also was an ancestor to Joseph, the husband of Mary. And then I found a book on Ruth, and it said the title was The Song of Ruth. And the author of this book is unknown, the one that wrote the book of Ruth in the Bible. The book of Ruth was found excellent. This is an excellent example of, in this book that I was reading, the Song of Ruth. It's examples of good faith, piety, patience, humility, industry, and long-suffering, loving kindness. When I saw industry, I said, well, why industry? Well, in those times, they grew, in that land, they grew corn, barley. And when Naomi went back to Bethlehem, they didn't have no jobs, they didn't have food to eat. They found a home with some family members of Naomi. And Naomi sent her out to work. So Ruth went out to work in the fields, and she would glean. She would pick up what the people left behind. She'd go through the barley and pick up what they left behind, took it back to Naomi, and that's what they ate from. And, they made food out of the barley and bread. And then she kept going back, and then Boaz came back because he was out of the country, and he came back to check on his farm there. And when he came back, he saw Ruth out there, and so he told his workers, leave some more barley out there for her. So she could be, and she got blessed, and then she kept working, and then finally, her and Boaz, start talking to each other, and that's how they met. And then he married her, and then they had the son Obed. And that's what I learned from reading. But when I heard industry, that's what I read in there, that the industry, that land was good. So, and the book that I read was written by, A Song of Ruth was written by Frank G. Slaughter. And he said, one of the oldest and most touching love stories in the world comes to life again in the absorbing new novel. That's the novel he wrote on Ruth. That it wasn't just what I just mentioned before. It was a great love story. How they met, how Boaz and Ruth met, and they just had children, and they just continued, and that's how their genealogy kept going and growing, and that's how I found out how they were, Rahab and Ruth were related. I didn't know that till I started reading and searching in this book that I found, and looking it up in my concordances, looking it up in my American, it's a study dictionary on the Bible, and I found it. I can't remember the name of it right now, but that's what I learned about Ruth, about more about her, and that this is a great love story. And that concludes my my representation.
Amen.
On Ruth.
Amen.